Hello, my name is John Mayer, and I'm the Executive Director of CALI, the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. The video you are about to watch is from the annual CALI conference held at the University of Michigan School of Law in Ann Arbor, Michigan on June 4th and 5th, 2026. Most U.S. law schools are members of CALI. CALI publishes over 1,400 interactive tutorials that teach the law to law students. Faculty can also use LessonLink to create formative assessments using CALI lessons. CALI publishes casebooks by paying law faculty to write and review books that can be adopted in many courses in law school. These books are free to download from our website, or print versions can be purchased at near cost. You can download the PDFs or even the Microsoft Word versions of most of our books and add your own commentary before distributing to your students. $300 casebooks are a thing of the past, and adopting one book from CALI saves you more than your entire institutional membership. If you would like to learn more, email me at jmayer@cali.org. I would be happy to visit or zoom into your school to talk about CALI.
Oh, better yet, better yet? Okay, good. Phew, 10 minutes. That's at least a year by old quantum time. First of all, I need to know how many of you are doing what we are. We just got that little bit of introduction a moment ago. Let me tell you about me first. I'm a native Michigander, and this is a delight to be at the University of Michigan. It's one of the most beautiful law schools, if you're of classical mind, as am I. And didn't get to go here, though. They decided they had a room for someone much stronger academically than me. So I went to Wayne State Law School and have not regretted that. It's been a wonderful journey for me, but I need to know how many of you are academic researchers, like librarians? 3, 4. How many are you in academic technology? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How many of you are just technologists, not in academia at all? Any of those? Are any of you entrepreneurs? Are any of you now or ever have been legal practitioners? Okay, a good modest amount of folks that we have here with a variety of backgrounds. But like John Mayer this morning, remember how he told us he had to get fit for the CALI conference, and he did all of this stuff, and he ordered a Peloton? Well, I realized I needed to get fit too. So I ordered a Peloton through Amazon, and AI got it all messed up. So what I got instead was a weekly delivery of a 3-layered chocolate cake. They're a little bit in opposition to each other. So when I do that, not quite the same effect. But as a result, I have a lot of knowledge about very many things, but a little knowledge about anything. So at the law school at Vanderbilt, I'd had a really wonderful relationship with Dean Guthrie, whose academic world was in the world of judicial bias. My world of a practitioner was in the area of mediation and conflict management and negotiation. So all affecting the dispute resolution process. We'd had a number of lunches together as we talked about the state of the law, the state of academic education, legal academic education. And at one point, I don't even remember how this arose, except for those maybe 10 lunches that we shared. But he stopped for a moment and he said, "Larry, you're a polymath." And I thought, oh, cool. I've got something I can be proud of, until I looked it up. And as you know, undoubtedly, a polymath knows a little about a lot of things. So all of those other things that I asked you about, I know a little bit about all of those things, but I don't go deep in any of those things. That's an advantage, but it's also a very significant disadvantage. And the value of being able to see it more globally and more in an integrated way than perhaps our typical siloed approach is that you can see things that weren't obviously apparent to everybody. And one of those things, I think, has occurred After we created the Program in Law and Innovation at Vanderbilt, which is all an experiential course to help lawyers become practice ready, which may offend some of your sensibilities because we know law school is to teach lawyers how to think, not practice law. Well, I'm of a different mindset, and so is the Program in Law and Innovation. And so 10, 12 years ago, we began courses and events focused around AI and law. And over the course of time, we watched that grow. Do you remember your mindset? Think about this for a moment. In November of 2022, specifically on the 22nd day, what was your mindset about AI? Did you know anything about what was about to happen or what had already happened? Because that's the day ChatGPT was released upon the world. And we all then began to think about AI in different ways. Were you using AI before ChatGPT showed up on the scene? Yeah. What are some of the ways AI has worked for us before there was such a thing as generative AI? Yes. The first that comes to mind, boy, I lived and died by spell check. Grammarly, navigation systems, satellite navigation systems, Siri, Alexa, on and on and on and on it went. But generative AI had a totally different complexion, and I'm pretty sure, haven't gone back to look, AI was not on the agenda in the summer of 2021. And today, at CaliCon 2026, more than half of the presentations have AI in their title. So something's happened to radically change that we didn't see coming, and we've gradually learned to deal with, and now it's a primary focus. Even with our legally oriented resistance to change, we've had no choice because AI is not going to go away. Right, Julie? That's what you tell your research students, right? Not that we love it, but we better learn how to manage it because it's going to be used by our students, by businesses, by education. We need to know its strengths. We need to know its weaknesses. So, how many of you are familiar with quantum computing? I see a little bit of that. Anybody want to explain quantum computing to us? No? No? You see, well, you'll talk to a quantum physicist, and if you say you understand quantum computing, they'll tell you you don't understand quantum computing. And the reason for that is because it is so unimaginable to our frame of reference who have been living with computing in the traditional sense for decades, taking it further and further and further each year. And it's binary. It's an either-or process. And so it's done phenomenal things over that period of time. And we see that every day with something new that AI has been generated for us to be able to use. And as Julie said in hers, I can't wait to see what's next. Don't count on it being the same tomorrow. But there are many, many, many risks. And so that's why I want to talk about quantum computing, because it's really two worlds colliding. And they're going to generate even more unprecedented capabilities and risks. And what we've experienced in data processing has been accompanied by a great focus on cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is what keeps your data safe from computers. And I don't know how knowledgeable you technologists are probably knowledgeable about the algorithms that now protect all of our data. Specifically RSA and ECC, those are the algorithms that cybersecurity consists of today. And virtually all of the most meaningful, valuable, and dangerous data is encrypted by those algorithms today. How safe is that going to be? And when should we be concerned? Because the two of them have merged, AI and quantum computing, and each is interdependent on the other. So what are we talking about? Okay, let's talk about the limits of traditional computing. How many of you know Geoffrey Moore by name or by reputation? Tell us about Geoffrey Moore and what law did he come up with? And right. And so what did he say about the perpetual nature of that exponential growth? Pardon? Okay, well, he said, yes. Right, and what with? It's with the accompanying reduction of cost. And he also said that it's not going to go on perpetually. Because in about 1975, he defined Moore's law, and he plotted it. And amazingly, although he died in 2025, we've reached the peak of Moore's law almost exactly at the same time he told us we would reach it. And silicon cannot go any further on the basis of Moore's law. It's reached its limit of processing capacity. So that law of Geoffrey Moore is now showing us the real data behind it, as well as not merely the potential mathematical theoretical data, but the real work that's being done in quantum. Now, this is going to be one of the most technology-sensitive movements that I'm going to make here. Let's see, because I want to show you Google AI and their quantum development. Oops. Let's go down here. Told you it'd be clunky. Okay, we're making progress. You able to see that? A browser? Okay. And just listen for about 4 minutes to what Google says.
The tantalizing promise of quantum computers is that they can do certain tasks exponentially faster than classical machines. And the quantum supremacy experiment is proof that this is indeed the case.
The word quantum computer is a little bit misleading because it sounds like a computer. And when people think of computer, they think of a phone or a laptop. The truth is the phone and the laptop and even a very powerful supercomputer all operate according to the same fundamental rules. And a quantum computer is fundamentally different.
The classical bit stores information as a 0 or 1, and a quantum bit can be both 0 and 1 at the same time. If you have 2 quantum bits, then there are 4 possible states that you can put in superposition. With 3 qubits, it's 8, 4 qubits, it's 16. It grows exponentially.
The nice thing about quantum supremacy is that this is a very well-defined engineering milestone.
In a nutshell, what we're trying to do is we're trying to show that experimental quantum computers can surpass the best supercomputers in the world.
To actually demonstrate quantum supremacy, we have these 3 steps. First, pick a circuit. Second, run it on the quantum computer. Third, simulate what the quantum computer is doing on a classical computer. We gradually increase the complexity of that circuit. At some point, it becomes completely impossible for the classical computer to keep up. Then we say we've achieved quantum supremacy.
We started building together the quantum chips to do this experiment. And then the evolution of the devices were more and more qubits and more complexity. It's very much an iterative process.
A lot of the work that we put in was not just these chips, but is also the infrastructure that you need to drive those chips. The cryostats that we install them in, all of the control electronics, software, all of this stuff is needed, and it all has to be developed.
When the experiment started, we were getting data from the experimentalists. We saw initially a beautiful straight line corresponding to our predictions.
Then, right before we hit supremacy, it dropped much faster and it fell below the threshold where it needed to be.
And there's nothing we can do because we don't know how to analyze past that. So everyone's like, oh, we're screwed because it's getting really, really bad at large number of qubits.
It's like, well, maybe there's some really complex interaction between all the qubits.
It turned out that the reason was rather benign. We calibrated a little bit better and then this problem disappeared.
So there wasn't like oh, we did it.
I think we crossed it, and then it wasn't clear that we crossed it, so we crossed it a little bit further.
It took me like a day to realize, like, hold on, this is actually experimental data. It's kind of amazing to see, how well the theory works.
The processor that achieved quantum supremacy is called the Sycamore processor.
And it's parallel processing 2 to the 53 states, which is 10 million billion. And thus that enormous amount of parallel processing is what gives it the power.
When we run small chunks of the computation in the largest supercomputer in the world, our estimate is that it will take thousands of years to complete the full computation.
Technologies are born this way. Let's say the space age started with a satellite orbiting Earth, and it was not doing much, it was just beeping.
The big technical achievement of quantum supremacy was really dependent on all this young talent who's kind of taken this and gotten it to work at a very technologically capable level.
We have reached a new computational capability. There are certain computations, the only place in the world where you can compute those things is here in our data center at Google Santa Barbara.
For the first time, we're showing that we can solve a problem that is just infeasible to do on the biggest computers ever made by civilization.
And what's exciting is now we're ready to turn this over to the world and say, let's figure out what we can do with this.
The thing that excites me most is building a useful quantum computer. When we can give a researcher a tool that is unlike any other and say, great, figure out something cool to do with it. Mankind is pretty good at that.
And we don't want you, dear. So
Who was it that said?
Not me. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to share and stop sharing. Can you help me, please? There we go. I think we're back in business. So the quantum computer that's already operating at Google is using 65 qubits. And if you caught it in there, our regular traditional computing consists of bits, which traditional computing operates on the basis of it's either a 1 or a 0. It's binary. And the processing has continued to be able to expand as transistors, which were capable of doing that work, have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. Today, Google's 65-bit computer, supercomputer, quantum computer, versus the world's most powerful supercomputer. Today, 13,000 times faster and more powerful. An example of what that looks like, traditional computing today would be able to hack your RSA or ECC cybersecurity in about 1 billion years, as long as the Earth's been around or whatever measure you want to use. Quantum computing's power could hack that in about an hour. If you want to understand the value and the power of this new age we're working into, also understand that IBM, Microsoft, Meta, and several private quantum computing entrepreneurs are doing the same thing. And it's a race to see who can do the most, the fastest, and bring it to the commercial market as soon as possible. IBM now has the capacity to do it at 100 qubits. So you begin to see the exponential growth of this power, and it's here now. It's not waiting. It's waiting for us to be able to get our hands on it, which, like with all computing in the past, you've seen expedited over time as these computers were reduced in cost, reduced in size, reduced in the power, and increased the power. So there's this symbiosis today between quantum and traditional AI, because each playing off of the other enhances the speed with which this someday occurs, because AI is helping quantum develop faster. Quantum is helping AI be processed faster. And it's not simply a matter of one or the other. It's, again, both operating in conjunction with each other are hastening the day when you and I might choose to go out and buy a quantum computer. And we know that's not likely for a while, but where's the money? Well, the market has already decided that this is more than theory, because the capital investment in quantum is just unimaginable. And it's not merely the big business, it's also the bad actors, the nation states who have a natural tendency to protect at all costs national defense and all of the technology that drives our economy nation by nation. China has already budgeted 1 trillion of their currency commodity for the development of quantum computing over the next 5 years. And we don't even know what North Korea has budgeted. We don't know what Russia has budgeted. China's pretty proud of it, so they made that public. Well, the US is also budgeting, because we can't be the last one in, and we can't be, as a nation and our national defense, subject to China, Russia, or North Korea deciding they want to take us over, because it becomes the most powerful militaristic tool you can imagine for opposing nation states. But criminals are also very, very interested in the day that they can go to the local Apple store and buy one. That's hyperbole, of course, but the more criminal resources that they have, the sooner that will be. How many of you had to suffer through the Canvas outage? I was grading papers, and all of a sudden there was no Canvas anymore. It took several days for the ransom to be paid, and the promise from a criminal enterprise called Shiny Hunters to, quote, give it back. Now, they're criminals. Do you trust that they gave it back? Or did they make a copy and give that back of the immense data that Canvas holds? Canvas is used by over 41,000 higher education institutions. 250 million of us, as either students or faculty, use Canvas. So what's in Canvas that could be of any concern to us or anyone? Can you imagine it? What would you be concerned about if you knew the data that you have access to is now in the hands of a criminal? How many of you are researchers? Would that trouble you? Okay, how about FERPA? Worried about that? What kind of information? Okay, okay. And was that the same everywhere? No, there were other institutions that lost far more private, top secret. You don't want to admit it, but think to yourselves about how your institution and the private data that you rely on might be in the hands of criminals today. But we're not worried, right? Because quantum's not here yet. So we can just sit back and relax. Well, that's the problem too. Because what the criminals are doing, as well as the nation states, Canvas is not encrypted data, so it's not a big deal to grab it. Holding it ransom, that's a criminal act, but it worked. Encrypted data is far more difficult, but again, protected by RSA and ECC, the most powerful encryption standards. Quantum computing can hack that in about an hour, whereas today, binary computing would take billions of years. So what the criminals are doing right now is grabbing the data, even though encrypted, and they're holding it, waiting for Q-Day, as they call it, to come. And then now think about whatever data you're familiar with. How about your own personal health data? That trouble you? Criminals could access it. How about your financial data? All of them encrypted by RSA or ECC, and they serve as the lock on everything, everything. Everything that's of consequence in our world today in the form of digital data are protected by one or the other of these two standards. And NIST has created the standards by which quantum or cybersecurity is to be measured. But something happened. RSA was created in 1977. ECC was created in 1984. But in 1994, a new algorithm showed up on the computing scene, Shor's algorithm. Again, at the time, merely theoretical, but if it could be deployed by a very, very powerful computer, it would clearly corrupt and be able to steal all of the existing encrypted data that exists today. Well, again, theory. Now, think back about the theory of quantum. It's 125 years old. Planck came up with a theory 125 years ago, right around the turn of the 20th century, that said, you know, there's this mathematical probability that at some point, quantum could actually be proven to be real. Einstein poo-pooed the idea. But 125 years later, the work by mathematicians and physicists continued until now. Shor has proven, theoretically, that quantum computing can exist through an algorithm of his own design in 1994. So what we see at Google, at Microsoft, at any of those large computer development entities is the use of Shor's algorithm, which will enable this whole process to turn evil when in the hands of the wrong people. So that means that there's collections going on now around the world in all of the centers of people and states that we don't need to trust, and it's just being held for Q-Day. And it's not an if, it's a when. And Q-Day represents the theoretical day that will come when quantum computing becomes commercially available, even at a very high cost, and not behind the walls of a research lab. And some project between 27 and 30, there will be tolerant systems. The fault tolerance level is what makes a quantum computer successful or not. It's all about the qubits, how they are superimposed, how they are interfered with, and how they entangle each other. For those of you knowledgeable about quantum, that's the process of being able to make more decisions instantaneously. Heard a great analogy today talking with someone. It's like going into the Michigan Law Library with all of its tomes, all of the books and all. You have those at your school too, probably still, right? These all still have libraries. Well, imagine putting a $100 bill at some point in every book on those shelves, and then assigning someone to find them all. So how long do you think that might take? Days, weeks, for a human to find a $100 bill in all of the books, the hardback books in any library. Well, quantum can do that instantaneously by operating on multiple levels simultaneously and creating answers to questions which, when prompted in the appropriate way, can multiply phenomenally the power of finding everything at the same time. And while traditional computing is trying to resist these encroachments by bad actors, they're doing it at a very slow speed. Quantum can create qubits for all of that data instantaneously across the world and process it at the same moment to find out what is going to be the secret to breaking those codes. So that's the kind of math we're up against. And it may be that cryptographically relevant quantum will be here by 2029, and then commercial vulnerability may be as early as 2030. Some predict 2035. But what's happening today, because AI and quantum are now working together to hasten the arrival of Q-Day? Who knows? Nobody knows. We couldn't have known when quantum computing could come to reality. But now that it's here, imagine all of the digital data worldwide that it can now access and process almost instantaneously. So what's privileged today will be harvested today, but breached tomorrow. And that's this notion of harvest now, decrypt later. So it shouldn't be surprising that there are some industries that are at the greatest risk. I know I'm biased, but I think legal data, even though encrypted, is at the highest risk because it has such enormous economic consequences. But certainly healthcare, financial data, I would suggest that legal data has even more value than financial data because financial data is the here and now. Legal data is talking about the here to come. Defense, military reasons, and then research in all of the worlds you work. So there are standards that the National Institute for Science and Technology has created as recently as 2024, and these standards establish what cybersecurity for quantum must look like and function like. And it's not simply voluntary. It's mandatory. For all government computing processes by 2027, January 2027, they must be quantum resistant because even the federal government is not willing to wait until 2030. So we're facing some real hard questions. Everybody knows the difficulty of building data centers for AI computing, the public awareness of the enormous environmental risk it imposes. I mean, it's right now of great concern to the world. How are we going to support AI that's growing exponentially, except by the creation of an exponential number of data centers? Well, now add quantum to the mix, because quantum is going to exponentially grow the data. So what are we going to do? We don't know. I mean, the optimist in me says that quantum and AI will work together to come up with an environmental solution. We haven't found one yet because that's somewhat dependent upon those who make money from the chaos. So who is benefiting from the creation of thousands of new data centers? Well, who is the government funding to do that? We know their names. They're being paid to create data centers in order to accommodate this increased amount of digital data on which the world turns, which I believe, and have used the phrase, it's the new oil. There's much greater economic value in digital data today, comparatively, than when oil was discovered and could be refined to fuel the world's economy. Digital data will do that. So how are we going to handle the environmental impact? And then what is it really? It's not a replacement for AI. It's an entirely different machine than traditional classical computing. So when they all work together, classical, seamless data bridge anoints and brings the data together and crosses that bridge to a quantum processor, well, that's what's coming. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? The answer is yes. But how are we going to govern it? What's in state? What's in store? What do we need to do in the legal community to help create governance structures that decide who's responsible for what, who's accountable for what, who has the right or the responsibility to take action for what? Without clear governance structures, it's still the wild, wild west. And it still is the wild, wild west. But this is what I think the architecture is going to look like in 2025. Classical AI, using quantum coprocessors, using post-quantum cryptography, meaning cryptography or cybersecurity sufficient to resist the quantum computing power, and networked, because the beauty or the craziness of quantum is if an atom can be superimposed with another atom, wherever it is, not limited by distance, but they can act together. So when you combine that matrix of thousands and 10,000s of qubits, again, the mind breaks, but it can be done without wires, without Wi-Fi, but by the nature of quantum computing itself. Atoms can connect with atoms through quantum wherever they are in space. So this is what's important, I think, for us knowing what we know and doing what we do. We really need to act now. We can't wait for 2030 or 2027. Between now and the end of this year, in our world of work, there should be a process in place to become quantum ready. What we should do now is inventory our cybersecurity in all of our organizations. We should assess the potential for any of that becoming harvest now, decrypt later. And we should position our organizations to become post-quantum protected. That's now. And then between 27 and 30, we should be implementing those protections. And by 2030, we should be in a position with all of the data that needs to be protected to be quantum ready. But it's no longer whether, it's when. And if we are not in a position to work with our organizations, whatever they are, law firms, academia, government, corporations, what is needed today are multidisciplinary task forces operating in every environment that has invaluable data to begin the process of getting to the place as soon as possible, preferably by 2027, so that your quantum computing strategy is in place and you're already doing the best you can to protect your most valuable data in a prioritized order. And without that, I think we're just tossing a coin and hoping for the best as we whistle walking past the cemetery. So, questions, comments, concerns of any sort? What makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what's just hoopla, what's just alarmism? Yes?
That's the right data in the United States. Well, it's industry, and that differs a little bit from Europe. That
Mhm. Yep. And it goes back to the governance issue. Who's in charge of law and regulation? I mean, who precipitates and gets legal protections either in place, enacted, or enforceable? It's the legal community. So as an academic, as a researcher, as a technologist, as an entrepreneur, we have to be working together within our groups of experts in any organization to take this task on and decide the answer to your questions. We can't wait for the National Institute for Science and Technology to do so. They've done so, but they can only impose that requirement on the federal government's computing. What are we doing? Even if you're not a technologist, even if you're not completely embedded in the notions surrounding quantum computing, you can ask in your organization what's being done. You can be a precipitator of action if nothing's being done. You can join any of those task forces if they're willing to bring you on as a perspective unique to your experience. New lawyer, technologist, legal researcher, practitioner, technologists themselves, policymakers. It's going to require action on our part. And this is that disclaimer. Armored Quantum, which you see there, is an organization which I helped co-found with others. We have a readiness assessment, a protocol. We also have in operation Q-Day quantum security applications. But you've got to do it yourself, regardless of who's going to do it with you. You've got to take action. You've got to take responsibility today before you find out later that you should have. Great question. Other questions? Skeptical audience? After lunch audience? Thoughts, pushback? I'm a litigator, I've got thick skin. No? Okay. The time is yours. Thank you for being here. On to the next break.